We are going to get started in about 1 minute. We're just letting last few people show up. So just sit tight. We'll be starting in about 60 seconds. All right, we're going to get rolling. Hello, and welcome to the Employer Fundamentals, and today's episode, Secrets to Better Claims Outcomes, Workers' Comp Experts Tell All. I'm your host, Joe Bardi, Marketing Communications Manager here at FrankCrum. FrankCrum is a family-owned business that employs more than 450 people and is headquartered in beautiful Clearwater, Florida, which is where we're recording this webinar today. FrankCrum has been in business for 42 years, and there are now 3 core businesses that we operate: FrankCrum, FrankCrum Staffing, and Frank Winston Crum Insurance. At FrankCrum, one of our missions is to help you, our partners, be the best employers they can be. In this series, we've been zeroing in on topics that have been fundamental to success in 2023, things like hiring, employee benefits, safety, HR, taxes, and much more. We've taken what we know about these topics and turned that information into this series of broadcasts. This is like our 7th episode of 2023. If you joined us for that show, welcome back. If this is your first time tuning in, I hope that you'll make us a regular part of your routine, as we have an interesting slate of upcoming live webcasts full of important info that will help you not only survive, but thrive as we head into 2024. Before we get rolling, a few notes about how this webinar will work. All attendees will be muted, but we still want to hear from you. Please feel free to submit questions in the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. We will answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation, and we will answer the rest via email after we're done here. A recording of this webinar will be emailed to registrants within 5 days, and an on-demand recording of each episode in the series will be available on my FrankCrum and the webinar series page, which we will link to in the notes. Also, be on the lookout for a post-webinar survey, which will be hitting your email inbox soon. Your comments are invaluable to us in improving the quality of these webinars, and we thank you in advance for any and all feedback. All right, let's get to it. Today's topic is Secrets to Better Claims Outcomes, Workers' Comp Experts Tell All. When a workplace accident occurs, the clock starts ticking. Health, business, and financial outcomes are tied to the speed of reporting, managing the claim, providing proper care to the injured worker, and closing the case. Unfortunately, in many instances, businesses lack the experience or expertise to optimize the claims process, which can result in lingering injuries, litigation, and unnecessary costs. My guests today are Kathryn Butkus, Workers' Compensation Claims Manager for FrankCrum, and Hector Cano, Workers' Compensation Claims Director for Frank Winston Crum Insurance. Kathryn has been with FrankCrum, supporting PEO clients by managing workers' compensation claims for 9 years, and has more than 35 years of experience in workers' comp across multiple jurisdictions. Kathryn is a board-certified compensation litigation adjuster. During her career, she's been involved in financial and quality file control audits and has implemented a physician-preferred provider list. She also works closely with medical facilities, adjusters, and employers on return-to-work programs. Welcome, Kathryn. Hector joined Frank Winston Crum Insurance in 2020 after working for a third-party claims administrator. He's been in the industry for almost 25 years and is licensed as a professional claims adjuster, a board-certified claims adjuster, and a board-certified compensation litigation adjuster with an AIC associate in claims designation. Welcome, Hector. Kathryn and Hector are here to walk us through common claims pitfalls and why they happen, what to expect from your claims processor, and how FrankCrum's claims processors work to bridge gaps and provide the oversight needed for an optimal resolution. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. All right, so Kathryn, I'm going to start with you. Could you just sort of briefly explain your role as a senior workers' compensation claims manager and the impact you've had on improving claims outcomes over the years?
Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. I appreciate it. As you said, I've been with FrankCrum for 9 years. In my role, I oversee the workers' compensation processing team, which we have 17 members that oversee the claims and help facilitate the claims between our client and the adjuster. Through my career, I've worked for major insurance companies. I've been on the side of being an adjuster, supervisor, manager. I've been involved in audits with the adjusters in different companies. So I understand the role of the adjuster and what is needed in their role. And with that information, I train the processors to make sure they get adequate information to give the adjuster so the adjuster can go forward with the claim.
Gotcha. Okay. And Hector, as a workers' compensation claims director, what specific responsibilities do you have in overseeing the claims process, and how has your experience influenced your approach?
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having us here today. So I oversee the workers' compensation claims department from a carrier perspective. We are an outsourced claims handling model. My main focus is more so on the money aspect of claims.
Okay.
So when it comes to reserves, it's a tricky concept because you can't have an adjuster that is over reserving claims, just like you can't have them under reserving claims. It's one of the leading causes for insolvency for self-insured carriers. So my job is to make sure that I'm looking at claims from a high-level standpoint with a high focus on reserve accuracy, but also looking for opportunities to try to mitigate some of that exposure on these claims. I'm looking for ways to improve cost containment associated with the vendors that we have on our panel for efficiency and effectiveness. We keep constant communication with the claims handling entities on the other side to make sure that we are getting the best possible results overall business that we have. I keep track of all the incoming claims on a monthly basis. Pendings, closing ratios, I even put things on maps just to kind of get a visual perspective of where the claims are taking place. And I take that information and I share it in our monthly management meetings, more so to kind of let upper management know how the workers' comp department is doing. I keep things on a 12-month span so that we can kind of see each month how we compare our categories from month by month or year over year per se. I also use that platform to escalate the catastrophic claims and give them an idea of what the anticipated exposure is going to look like and where action plans are on those specific files. We have monthly meetings with our underwriting department, risk management department. Same kind of concept. We're trying to discuss these internal data that of the claims that we receive the prior month, but we'll take a deeper dive into the actual claims because now we're talking about the actual injuries that took place the month prior. We're talking about which clients had the most accidents, where the accidents took place, any kind of trends that we've identified. But we're also keeping an eye out to see if our workers' comp department has identified any kind of like safety hazard precautions that we can do to prevent claims from continuing to happen. And that's the kind of discussions that we have. The experience part of it that you were talking about, just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I've spent over 20 years on the claims handling side, both adjusting and supervising workers' compensation claims. Early on in my career, I had an opportunity to handle a lot of the high dollar complex claims, or what the industry recognizes as catastrophic injuries. Handle various PEOs, large staffing companies, hospital accounts, municipalities, which is your police officers and firefighters. Whole different set of laws and regulations.
Yes, absolutely.
Claims. But in any event, my point is that all of that experience has worked out really well for me here because having that kind of knowledge on the claims handling side makes a big difference when you're looking at things from a carrier perspective. Just to give you an example, at FrankCrum has a lot of construction industry-based clients. And because of that, we do tend to see some severe and catastrophic injuries that come through. So being able to identify not only the exposure on those claims, but what resources to engage is critical, not only from a carrier perspective, but from a client perspective for the associated cost savings, but more importantly for the injured worker. The more experience you have surrounding a workers' compensation claim, the better outcome that an injured worker is going to get. Especially on a TBI case, for example, traumatic brain injury claims. You have a lot of stuff that's going on right from the beginning, a lot of time-sensitive medical treatment, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, psychosocial and behavioral components. And a lot of that gradient is taking place at the initial hospital setting, and then they get released to an acute rehab facility. The challenge becomes when they get released from that acute rehab facility, right? So it buys you a couple of months. But at that point, you need to have an experienced adjuster on the other side or an experienced claims team to have those conversations, because now you got to come up with a comprehensive action plan and figure out what are you going to do with this injured worker. Because you got to keep the momentum going. That medical treatment, you can't lose control of. What's going to cause is the cost to skyrocket. So those are the kind of things that we look at in our department. We use our expertise to kind of put those action plans together. And overall, it just brings a better result to the injured worker.
Gotcha.
And the last thing I'll just say, just so we don't get misconstrue anything, when I'm talking about like the cost savings, it's not that we are, cutting medical treatment or, in any kind of way. We're just finding the most effective and efficient.
Right. It's about efficiency.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And from your answer, like, you're listing this, or I'm going to use the term stakeholders, but there's multiple interested parties in any claim. There is the injured worker themselves, there's the business, there's the medical professionals, and it's in everybody's interest to have the claim actually handled in an efficient and proper manner, because everyone's going to suffer. It's not, no one really benefits from mishandled claims.
Right.
Okay, so thank you both for sort of going through that with I'm sort of in awe of the amount of expertise I have on the couch. So now let me hit you guys with questions about claims. So what are the most common challenges that employers face when attempting to optimize their workers' compensation claims process, and how can they overcome it? Going back to the efficiency we were just talking about.
Well, I think one of the things is they need to make sure they report the claim immediately.
Okay.
So we can get our team going on it, get the information and everything. And I think they're hesitant sometimes to report the claim. They're not really sure they have all the information or not. That's all right. Give us the information that you do have, and we will continue with the investigation, and also give the adjuster who will be assigned to the case information. So on our part, FrankCrum, my workers' comp team, will work with you, client, to get the information from you and get the person medical treatment immediately if needed. So that's really important. What you don't want to do is you don't want to withhold the injury for any reason. Okay. You don't want to delay in reporting claims, and you don't want to try to handle the claim yourself, such as I'll pay the initial emergency room visit or the hospital visit. I'll just take care of it. It's not going to be that big. It's going to be kind of minor. That's what you don't want to do, because sometimes they change into very serious claims, and they can.
And when you say,
Right.
you said to don't delay on reporting for any reason, that includes even if you're the employer and you suspect maybe this claim isn't even above board, you think there might be fraud involved in the person. Doesn't matter. Don't sit on it. Don't wait. You want it. That may be even a case where you want to report it even quicker.
Because you don't want, you as the employer, you want to let your employees know that if you have an injury, we're going to take care of it.
Right.
Okay. Even if you think it's fraud is a huge definition. There's a huge thing to fall under fraud. Okay.
Absolutely.
Let the professionals make that decision. The adjusters who are licensed in the particular state that you're in, let them make that decision. Give us the facts. They will gather facts, and based on the legal opinions or the legal in each individual states,
right,
it's up to them. Okay. It's not sometimes you think things are fraud, they aren't really fraud. It's kind of a word that people throw out there.
Of course. Yeah. And I mean, there's an entire legal system set up to argue these cases, right? And it takes months and years.
One of the things to piggyback on what Kathryn was saying is the fact that a lot of employers don't realize that let's say that they pay the initial medical bill and they don't report it to us. Well, employer knowledge is carrier knowledge in a lot of the jurisdictions. So now our time has already started ticking, and it could be that by the time they decide to report that workers' compensation claim, you could have waived any defenses that you could have had initially.
Explain that phrase real quick, just briefly. Employer knowledge is carrier knowledge. What does that mean? So, like for example, in Florida, the minute that the employer knows that an accident took place, they look at it as if we knew. As if the insurance carrier knew as well.
Once we're trying to conduct our investigation and trying to come up with, filing, things at a certain time level, we could get barred from using that defense, because they can say, well, if your employer knew about it, it's the same thing as the carrier knew.
And going back to what you were just saying, it's like, if you know about it, it's as if your insurance carrier already knows about it anyway. So the idea that you're not calling and reporting makes no sense, because you are only hurting yourself and actually probably ruining your outcomes further down the line.
Correct.
So once the employer has knowledge of an injury, the time it starts ticking.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And the longer you let that clock tick, 30, 60 days, and then something happens, a minor injury turns into a major injury, that case has been accepted, and maybe it shouldn't have been.
Right.
We don't know, because we haven't done investigation.
And now your hands as the employer are tied, and the carrier's hands are tied, and you just kind of have to write it out. So again, speed, always report. And always report will be the number one. But so what are other critical steps for an employer to take when a workplace accident occurs right from the moment of the incident?
I think they need to start with training their managers and their supervisors first, to recognize that when an injury happens, they need to report it to the appropriate person. It may be the person who's in the office, if the supervisor or manager is out in the field, or pick up the phone and call FrankCrum. You know,
Okay.
whoever you have to report it, but report it to someone immediately. And that's really important. Have a process going on how to report the claim, when to report a claim. And we can help you with that too. We can help our clients put together a checklist for their managers or the supervisors, especially if they're out in the field, what they should do. Encourage employees to report all claims. Some employees think they're gonna get mad at me if I report this claim. They're gonna, retaliate against me if I report a claim. Tell them no. If you're injured, I'm your employer. I want to make sure you're okay. I want to make sure you're taken care of. That's our job. Let's take care of you. Let's make sure you're fine to get back to work.
Right. And I mean, it's all, minor injuries can become major injuries as well.
Absolutely.
And so it's important not to let things go just because it looks okay right now.
Correct.
That you may be setting yourself up for God knows what further down the line.
Yeah, and we do have, that situation where I could give you an example. We had a gentleman who had a burn on his arm from steam.
Okay.
And I'm gonna take care of it. Don't worry about it. The employee's like, oh, okay. Well, 2 weeks later, the burn turned into a major infection, which caused him to be hospitalized for a few days. When I talked to the client and explained it to him how important it is, and I understand the employee said, I'll take care of it. He's not a physician.
Right.
I'm not a physician. Let's get him to a physician. Right. To make sure it's taken care of properly so it doesn't turn into an infection.
Right. Because I'm guessing the treatment of the infection was both more dramatic and more costly for everyone involved than had it been handled right up front. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, all right. So that's sort of all the things that employers should do right after an incident. I want to talk a little bit too about claims processors. Sort of as I was preparing for this, I was learning about claims processors. Can you so explain what a claims processor is and what should employers expect when they engage with a claims processor?
So like I said, I have 7 team members who are claim processors. And what they do is they gather all the information from the client, the employer, on who, what, where, when, and how. Okay, that's the information you need. Now, you may not have all of the information immediately, but get as much as you can. The processor will direct them to an urgent care, depending on the severity of the case or the timely reporting of the case.
Right, okay.
Okay, if it just happened in the field, Joe's out in Pinellas County someplace, all right, where's Joe? All right, the closest urgent care is Concentra or wherever the case may be. They will call that urgent care and say, hey, Joe's on his way. He has a back injury or cut his finger, whatever the case may be. He has authorization for first-time treatment. We'll get him treated immediately that day. And that's what's really important. They will also file the claim with our third-party administration, who will assign it to an adjuster, but the processor will also follow the claim along to make sure the adjuster is doing what they need to do, that the employee's getting their proper care. If they're being referred to physical therapy, we check to make sure physical therapy is being set up or any diagnostic tests. We also will communicate with the client, hey, Joe now has a return to work, a light duty return to work. Do you have work available for him? Because the important thing is to get the injured worker back to work as soon as you can.
Right.
To mitigate the damage and the cost of the claim.
So the claims, so it's fair to say the claims processor is like the quarterback or the head coach or the manager that is sort of like coordinating between all of the different ends of what is going on.
The liaison between our client and the adjuster. And we provide the client the wage statement, the wages that are needed, any information that, a job description, we ask the client to give us a job description. So the adjuster has that, and then a nurse case manager, if a nurse is assigned to it, description to go to the doctor and say, hey, this is Joe's job. Can he go back to work with his injury? What are the restrictions? And then we communicate that back with the client. We go back and forth. So,
which obviously saves the client or the employer in this case having to know all of this information or look it up or whatever. Just the amount of detail behind what goes on a claim is sort of labyrinthian to understand while you're also trying to run your business. Okay, so let's talk about we've talked about sort of the processing and what they should do as far and speed being paramount. But if you're an employer, what are some things that you can do on your end to mitigate a claim when it actually occurs?
No, I think that the timely reporting is of the essence, obviously. Get the experts involved immediately. once you know of a claim. But one of the things that you can help out tremendously is figuring out if there's any kind of way that you can bring back an injured worker once they've been seen by the authorized doctor and they've been given either a light duty restriction or sedentary restrictions. But a lot of the times, we have these conversations with the employers, and depending on the type of job that they have, they think that immediately, just because they have a 5-pound lifting restriction or a sitting restriction, they automatically think like, no, we don't have that kind of light duty available here at the job site. And that could be true from like up until that day. But we have companies in effect that can go there and do an assessment of their actual job site, and they can come up with certain, descriptions that will fit whatever the doctor said, and it's interesting because we've seen it before, as in like, oh, we can get a stool, and the person, what if we got a stool, could they do this? And sometimes the employer is like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Well, now you have somebody that has returned to work instead of them just sitting at home collecting indemnity benefits. But it's keeping them engaged too. It's also healthier for the injured worker to be back in a work setting instead of just in a home setting.
I was going to ask you about that as well. Like I think that there's a conception that the insurance company or the employer is trying to rush the from the person who's been injured. They will have the perception of being rushed, but there's been studies and everything behind the idea that return to work is really important for the injured party as well, to sort of get on with their life after that. It's not just about, we don't want to be paying benefit, whatever. No, it's about getting on with life.
Yeah, kind of like when I was talking earlier, that psychosocial component, that's it really, it's a big impact. You just had sustained an accident. So you had something negative, that's affecting you. But if you're just sitting at home, not able to do certain things, you're going to focus on all the negative. And it's easy to go down this tunnel of negativity. Versus, you're back to work doing certain things. And we also have other companies that if the employer cannot accommodate, we try other routes where maybe there's a nonprofit or something like that we can engage to get the injured worker back to work. But yeah, the best thing that the employer can do to assist is seeing if they have anything available, or just cooperating when they get contacted by one of our companies to see if they could at least do an assessment of their job site. And if it's no, it's no. That's fine.
And I think it's important for the employer to stay in contact with the injured worker. A lot of times we'll get the injured worker will say, I haven't talked to my employer, I haven't talked to him in a long time. They get the feeling of they don't really care about me. And we always tell the employee, you need to make sure you call, so-and-so, your employer, after a doctor's appointment. We'll call you also, but you want to make sure that communication is ongoing. You want to let them know that you are valued with our company. We want you back. And, as far as any employer, I mean, anybody who loses an employee, whether it be through an injury or someone, terminates their employment, you've got to replace that person. You've got to train that person. That's all that costs money. So if you can get the person back who's already trained that position, or as Hector said, if we go through a job analysis and sometimes do modifications to their job, because we're all creatures of habit. We all do this job at the same time, right? We all come to work at the same time. We are creatures of habit. So if you can get that modification of that job that they're always doing, but change a few things, tweak a few things, and they're back to work. It's all,
which becomes a better outcome for both the company and the person involved.
Yes.
All right, so we're kind of getting almost out of time, but I have one more question. I want to talk a little bit about this, just to sort of sum up, because we've been talking about all of this from the perspective of one of our clients or someone who works with us on claims, but there are people who don't work with us and are just going to handle claims themselves. So I want you to sort of discuss the advantages of FrankCrum's process for claims oversight and management and how it differentiates itself from the rest of the industry.
Sure, I could start with that. I think the FrankCrum family has done a great job with reinvesting into their company, even within each department. Both from a technology standpoint, hiring the right people, experienced people to make sure everything's going in the right direction. I mean, just in the workers' comp department alone, we have a vast amount of experience. We have a chief claims officer, Jonathan Gerdes, myself as a director, Kathryn as a senior claims manager. We have Victor Rivera as a claims manager. Just the four of us alone, there's like 120 years of claims experience.
It's a brain trust for sure.
So it really is amazing, and it makes things a lot easier to be able to oversee these workers' comp claims. Some of the things that we do also that differentiate from a lot of other people being the fact that we do have this amount of experience we hold our claims handling entities accountable. And what we do also is that we meet with them on a monthly basis.
Okay.
And any kind of workers' compensation claims that have an upcoming mediation, if there's a final hearing, any kind of litigation issues, if there's a reserving issue, if they want settlement authority because that's the route that they chose to go, we have these monthly discussions. And even with our local one, we even go in person on a monthly basis. We sit down with the adjusters, develop those relationships with them, give them an opportunity to present those claims to us. But at the same time, we have also the experience knowledge to be able to like look at their evaluations and kind of figure out what the best action plans are for those things. And a lot of companies don't do that. But doing that on a monthly basis has been a major change that I've seen. And we've done that for a very long time. That's one of the key differentiators that I've noticed that we haven't seen in other companies that I've been at.
And we have the team, the processing team, longevity. You know, Pat Arkema has been with us for 30 years.
Yes. Yeah.
Has been on the FrankCrum processing team. So she's very well aware of the company and very experienced. We have Tammy Lindsay and Hannah Crum, who's been with us almost 20 years, each of them. And then we have another adjuster who we just hired. She's an adjuster, but now she's in the role of the team manager and employee. So she has that knowledge. So we have, and two other processors who have the knowledge, you know, the background. We have, you know, Sandra Knight, who is from, she came from an attorney's office, but she's got the work comp background,
right?
So, which is fine, which is great.
It's actually a useful
Absolutely,
mix. Yeah,
very useful. So we have a mix of people with longevity with the company, which is important, and also a really good background to bring in. You know, the new hires we've brought in the past year or so, they have a good background to bring in their knowledge of what they've done in their other jobs with Frank. Now they're with FrankCrum, and they have that.
And a lot of them are licensed as well.
Licensed,
you know, they're also licensed adjusters. So, you know, you have that component. So again, you know, a lot of experience surrounding our department. And there's a lot of, you know, we have good communication also with underwriting and risk management. So we do a lot of good teamwork. You know,
right on. Yeah, absolutely.
And externally.
So it makes a lot of sense. The ability, all this expertise sort of is able to see this process from a lot of different angles. And if you're just an employer out in the world doing whatever, claims may not be, you may not have spent 100+ years working on learning all the ins and outs of claims processing. And so, yes, I totally see how what we do is incredibly useful. All right. That is, did we get any Q&A questions, Producer Ali? Okay. So we're going to wrap up then. Thank you guys so much. That was really good. Really informative. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping as we wrap up here. A reminder that we're going to send a survey to all of the attendees, and we appreciate any and all responses. Also, we have what's coming up next for the Employer Fundamentals series. Our next webinar, titled "Don't Let Regulatory Changes Derail Your Business: What You May Have Missed in 2023 and Should Watch For in 2024," is coming up on Wednesday, December 6th from 11 to 11:30 a.m. As an employer, keeping up with endless regulatory changes is almost impossible, and the stakes are high. At FrankCrum, we're happy to help you cut through the noise and understand the implications of changing rules on your business. In this next webinar, I'll be sitting down with Sandra Novatko, Senior Human Resource Consultant for FrankCrum, to discuss updates to 2023's HR best practices and 2024's proposed guidelines from the Department of Labor, the National Labor Relations Board, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And that's it for today.
Oh, we have one question.
We have one question.
What if a sub had an accident and never reported the accident? What is the route for this scenario?
Well, there's a lot of investigation that needs to take place initially, right? So if a sub had an accident, the first thing that we want to find out is if that sub has a certificate of insurance separately. You know, is it a situation where the general contractor happens to be our client company that now had an accident? But a lot of those things, you know, if we have a general contractor that hired a sub and they didn't do the due diligence to confirm that that certificate of insurance was valid, and this is, you know, talking now separately because we have different books of business, the PEO book of business and then the open market book of business. So in an open market fashion, it does escalate to the next statutory employer who has the actual insurance policy. So one of the things that I could say to the client companies or the employers is that if you hire anybody that's a sub to do work, don't just assume that they have insurance. You know, make sure you're verifying, get that certificate of insurance. And there's ways that you can look it up online as well to make sure that it's just not one that they got 2 months ago. They didn't make payments and they got canceled or whatever the case is. They could still check if that insurance is still valid. And then at that point in time, you know, keep a copy of it. And when the claim comes in and if it gets reported, send that in to us, but let us do that investigation for you.
The follow-up question. They do have insurance. Do we want to report it to their carrier then?
So there's some scenarios where we could do both, where we can sit there and if you gave us a call and let us know that, you know, if we got named on something that's through litigation, right? If obviously if an accident took place and they have the insurance, that's fine to contact their carrier and then go ahead and get that reported. However, if we've been named for some reason, we do set up a claim, we make the initial phone calls, and sometimes we can get those easily dismissed and then it just goes away without any kind of issues.
I think the best thing to do is if you are put in that situation where a subcontractor that you hired is asking you to indemnify them or provide workers' comp coverage for them, to call us immediately. And we'll get the information and, you know, process it and make sure that it's either accepted or denied, depends on the facts.
Right.
And that's a hard question to answer because without having all the facts. But the best thing to do is just, if you're named, if they ask you to put it under your policy, to make sure you call us and discuss it with us and we can walk through the steps.
Because we even have attorneys that'll do that stuff for us as well. You know, they'll make that phone call, they'll make sure that they submit a copy of the certificate of insurance and they can get us dismissed immediately or get them dismissed immediately. And that's what we want at the end of the day. We just don't want something lingering out there, hoping that it gets dismissed and it never does. And now you have a hearing coming up or something to that nature.
Yeah.
All right.
Any
All
other
right.
questions? That's it.
Thank you,
Okay.
question askers. That was great. We love the Q&A questions. All right, and that's it for today. Before another question comes in, let me wrap this up. No, that's it for today. Thank you, everybody. I'll be back on December 6th. I hope you will be too for our next webinar. Happy Thanksgiving. It's probably not too early to say that. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you in December.
Thank you.